Hey yo, Phoebe Rizzo here talking to the Void once more. And seeing that there's been a couple people watching a few of these, I guess the more I talk to the Void, the more the Void stares back. Well, today I wasn't sure which film I was going to get around to, and as time went on, I got into a bit of a time crunch, so I had to carefully choose a film that was not too long, kind of aiming for an hour and a half one, but also had to be not too graphic, as the company I was watching it with doesn't prefer more gruesome horror films. So had to scroll through my list of the upcoming ones, and only one really jumped out that fit both those bills, and it's another of the older ones. I took a look at The Day of the Triffids. Now, this has been in the been kind of a major point of the sci-fi films for quite a while, but it's one that I was actually not very familiar with at all. I know it's based on a novel, and the novel was very well received in its day, and the movie itself has been remade not once but twice into two different miniseries. But despite all that, I had really actually very little idea what the Day of the Triffids was about, other than just hearing the name every once in a while. And personally, I'd actually kept crossing it in my head with a different Japanese film called Mantango, which is an entirely different animal altogether. That one is people turning into mushrooms. This one is a entirely different killer plant movie. Well, the Day of the Triffids, I will say its setting is interesting, if in today's day and age not exactly plausible. The movie itself was made in 1963, so it definitely goes back to some cheesy 60s sci-fi. That said, the movie itself was very enjoyable, particularly with the setup. Now, the plot of it is, how best to describe this? Because there's a lot of elements kind of coming together all at once into a perfect storm of disaster. So the main focus right at the beginning is a meteor shower that is pretty much able to be seen worldwide and is going on for apparently all night. It's supposed to be very beautiful, so most of the population at least watches the meteor shower for a while. Then, and a plant that came down. It's not clear on whether it was from this meteor shower or a previous one, since people were familiar with it. It's like a plant from space, the Triffid, seemed to also react to the presence of the meteor shower and began growing very fast. However, the next day, anyone who watched the meteor storm went blind, and now the Triffids are out of control, and they are a 7 foot tall mobile killer plant. So, two major competing elements there. Worldwide blindness, with a the movie describes as 99% of the population is blind, while anyone who was inside and didn't look at the meteor shower, they're fine, but everyone else had their optic nerve essentially burned out by it, which you think people would have noticed their that much irreparable damage being done just by staring at it, but well, apparently not. 60s sci-fi meteor magic, I guess. But in addition to that, the once relatively docile but hungry plants of the Triffids are now large, mobile, and spreading everywhere. And it's pretty much a survival tale following a Navy man who's survived because he was blinded in an accident and has just gotten a surgery to restore his sight. So he had wraps around his eyes during the meteor storm. Wakes up completely alone in a hospital and wanders out to try to see what's going on and survive. The opening was actually reminding me a lot about the film 28 Days Later, and that movie might have been actually paying an homage to this one. I think the more I look at it, the military commander, its name is kind of escaping me right now. I think it was uh, Bill Mason. Uh, as he goes around, the population's in panic as everyone's blind, and he's one of the few people who can see, so people are trying to rely on him, particularly a young girl, Susie, who's 12, and she's an orphan who ran away from school and spent the night in a luggage car, so she missed the meteor shower. and they pretty much start in London and make their way both to France and then to Spain as they try to find a safe place. So it's pretty much a keeps segueing into various vignettes of how the world's falling apart without mostly focusing on people being blind rather than the Triffids themselves, with the exception of the main characters who are constantly stalked by large killer plants. I will say the effects of this movie are definitely of the time. The meteor shower is a laughable light show, and the monsters themselves, you can actually see the strings pulling them around, and they just look like large multi-stalked uh, shrubberies that are being puppeteered around. The noises they make are kind of effective, as well as the kind of oppressive nature that they try to give off of being surrounded by these endless area of killer plants. So it's a cool setting. Though the effects definitely are a bit lacking. Some of the more modern miniseries remakes might be interesting in there. It was remade twice. Once in the 80s and then actually once in 2009. So I might have to take a look at some of those ones because I did enjoy this one. I'd like to see more going on with it. The Triffids themselves are nearly indestructible. As you chop them up, they just start regrowing. They spread by pollinating and going everywhere, and they mostly hunt by sound. But they might have some sort of like a spray that can paralyze, I think. It was kind of unclear what some of the abilities of these things are. But they don't like fire, and at the end, a scientist who was researching it that was not part of the main plot. He was just kind of off on his own with his wife in a lighthouse, isolated. Managed to discover that salt water will actually hurt them for convenience sake, I guess. Kind of harkening back to a little bit of the War of the Worlds sort of things, where disease kills it, and this one it's water that kills it. So it's a good movie overall. It's well acted, well put together, and just kind of for the dystopian world falling apart aspect of it makes it definitely worth a watch. If even if the creature effects are very lacking, but yeah, I give it a watch. It's a classic for a reason. All right.